Welcome to Narratives in Black, the show where we deep dive into the stories, struggles, and triumphs of Black leaders, activists, and artists shaping our communities in Boston and beyond. I'm your host, Amanda Shea. And today, we're sitting down with a trailblazer whose work has redefined what it means to create safe and inclusive spaces for marginalized voices in the city. Curtis Santos is the co-founder and executive director of the Boston Lesbi Gay Urban Foundation, better known as Blue. Since its founding in 2020, Blue has become a cornerstone for the LGBTQIA+ community, especially queer people of color, through initiatives like mentorship programs, workforce development, and the reclamation of Boston Black pride. Curtis is not just a leader, he's an advocate, a visionary, and a creative force behind programs that empower individuals to love themselves, embrace joy, and persevere through life's challenges. Curtis Santos is here to share his story, his mission, and the lessons he's learned along the way. Curtis, welcome to Narratives in Black.
What's up?
How you doing, friend?
I'm doing well.
Are
Thank you
you
for
well
having me.
rested now?
Yes, I guess, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because you had a really busy June.
It was very busy. June and July was very busy.
July was busy too.
Yes.
How are you
Yes.
feeling like now that everything is kind of like wrapped up?
I have a sense of pride and joy ever since everything has wrapped up from June into like the beginning of July. Just looking at everything happening in that, 34 days.
Listen, it's really like
yes.
7 months.
Yeah, you have to
because
plan
it's
it
the
out.
it's the
Yeah.
build up, right?
Yes.
I want to jump into some of that really quickly before we get into the background of Blue, right?
Absolutely.
So how challenging is it to not only be inclusive in all of your events, at the same time, like how much work physically goes into that and how much planning does it take?
It takes about 8 months of planning. And so I think I don't do it alone. I have a team behind me that actually helps us produce Boston Black Pride. And this year was the first year that we actually created a committee to support it. And so I think, looking at how long it takes about 8 months, literally 8 months to a year to plan Boston Black Pride.
And most people don't know this at home, but like normally, even when you're in the planning process, there's other things going on in the background. How are you able to balance all that?
It takes a team. I go back to that team word, right? I think it takes a team to really make sure that one, everything's getting done in a timely manner, but also we have other initiatives and other projects that are happening on top of that. So thinking about the compound effect, and it just takes me to be able to be flexible, one for me to be able to see things really quickly, make quick decisions, executive decisions really quickly, but also feel confident in the decisions that are made to know that whatever rolls out is going to roll out to be what it is.
I'm really impressed because I feel like since the inception of Boston Black Pride, it has grown tremendously. We're in the seventh?
Yeah, we're
Seventh
going into the seventh
annual?
year. Yep, the next year, 2026, will be our seventh year.
That's
Yes.
crazy.
It came by fast.
It really did though. What are some of the challenges that you feel like you still need to work on as far as, just the inception, the production, all of the things, but then also what are some of the things that you've seen that you're like, I'm really proud of this and I did not expect it to grow this exponentially?
Some of the areas that I think that we still need to work on is getting the word out, right? I think that Boston Black Pride is one of many of our initiatives, but Boston Black Pride is a national movement. It's just not a city movement, it's a national movement. And to be able to be honored, I should say, to be honored to carry out the weight of curating a Boston Black Pride is huge.
Yeah.
I think about our legends, who was our ancestors, I call them legends, who have created the path for Boston Black Pride to exist, but never in a way that it's being done now. And I think that that's just the millennial feel that we're just spitting on it, right? But I think it takes, yeah, to answer your question.
Your work with Boston Lesbi Gay Urban Foundation has made a profound impact. Like that we can't deny, especially in reclaiming Boston Black Pride and creating spaces for LGBTQIA people of color. But in the beginning, before all of this, before the resume, Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and what moments or lessons from your early life shaped the advocate and leader that you are today?
Oh wow.
Like, take me back to baby Curtis.
I'm about to really quickly. I go back to so I'm from Bromley Heath, which is now called Mildred C. Haley Development, which is in Jamaica Plain. Some people know it from other names too. But I grew up in Bromley Heath, and growing up in Bromley Heath as a young boy, it was the jungle. I call it the jungle. I'm a Boston native. I've been here all my life. Been navigating through urban communities for a long time. And growing up in that particular neighborhood really shaped my viewpoint on community because in that neighborhood, it was a community that really settled to love each other. But when I call it the jungle is whatever happens, it goes down, you know? And so being young, I was always the nosy kid. Always the nosy kid.
You're also a Taurus.
I
I don't like to call it nosy. I like to call it inquisitive.
Okay, inquisitive kid. My nanny used to be like, "You all nosy,"
Because black folk, you know.
yeah. But I am very thankful for being able to see and witness what I have seen in that moment of time of growing up. What I've seen was culture. What I've seen was celebration. What I've seen was a sense of belonging. And growing up in that community, you know, there's something called community efficacy, right? And we don't talk about it often enough, where community look out after one another, right? And growing up in that particular community, they looked out for each other, right? They looked out for the babies, they looked out for each other. And being witnessed and seeing some of the adverse experiences that I have been witness to, such as, you know, being in the middle of crossfires, you know what I mean, gun crossfires, seeing folks fight, you know, all these different special nuances growing up in that particular development really shaped my viewpoint on community. And growing up there also, I was really actively in like youth programs and really getting my foot wet in different areas. My mom was always like, find a job, get a job, stay focused. And being one of the only black males in my immediate family to actually go to college and really seek other educational experiences was really a huge success in my family.
Bromley. First of all, I know it's Mildred C. Anybody who's from anywhere, it's always going to be its
Bromley.
name.
Yeah, it's gonna be
okay,
Bromley.
just like exit 15 will forever be exit 18. Okay,
That
those
part,
who
that
knows
part,
know.
that part.
I can only imagine little Curtis being in all of this, right? Like, I love the fact that you named community efficacy because we talk about that a lot, especially in the black and brown communities where it's like, if you're in the neighborhood, especially if you're an 80s baby, 90s baby, that was kind of what we were bred into. I see that there is a disconnect now in 2025 where people kind of mind their business and just stay to themselves. People barely know their neighbors. I think for me, my other question coming out of that is like, let's call it what it is. It's the project.
It's the project, yeah.
It's the projects. It's a housing development. It's the hood.
It's the hood.
It is the hood.
It is. No, it really
I live right
is.
down
It
the
really
street
is.
from
Yeah,
there,
it
so
really is.
I've seen it change over
Yes.
time over the last 18
Gentrification
years.
is a mother effer, right?
I mean, and it's happening at a very, very fast rate, right? So for me, not only living in something like that, which can feel very home, but can also feel very dangerous, what were some of the things that made you kind of fearful of living in that community? Outside of like obviously the violence,
Yeah.
what were some of the things that made you
I think
fearful?
my sexuality, right? I think let's speak truth to, you know what I mean, my identity. I think that, you know, when I walk in rooms and when I show up, I'm showing up as a black individual, as a black male at that, right? But when I start beginning to say who I am and how I identify, I think it takes its own turn. And so I think growing up in Mildred C. Haley development at the time, I was afraid to come out, right, in the community that I lived in. But when I did come out in the community that I lived in, the rumors got around fast. You know, it got around
Telephone.
fast. And that tells us how connected we were back then, right? Where rumors got around that fast, but it was just like, oh, you know, Curtis is gay now. You know, oh, Curtis is gay now. But I think for me, the joy, I don't know, I'm getting emotional right now, but I think Maya who passed away. And I think Mika. And that's back in the day we called them Nuki and Micho. So some people might know those names, but I thank them because they made it easier for a black gay man like me to show up in the projects, right? They didn't care. They were very fierce. They were very like, I don't give a hoot a nanny, I'm gonna show up. And I think that by them doing that, made it easier for people like me and other people behind me to be themselves in a hard jungle in the projects where folks like us usually got picked on, usually got harassed and things like that. And I think by that experience alone gave us strength in our community because now we had these hood guys protecting us, right? Like, nah, y'all ain't gonna do that to Curtis, Micho, Maya, who, like how they go by their names, but you're not gonna do it, you know? And so, yeah, I thank them. I really do thank them.
I know you're gonna get emotional throughout some of this conversation because we're really talking about you. I think one of the beautiful things about Narratives in Black is that I love the resume. We know you've accomplished a lot of things. At the same time, there's people out there that are still struggling and are still in these types of hoods that are struggling to come out and just be their authentic selves.
Absolutely.
And I think that I know that you are one of the biggest examples of just living your truth and being who you are no matter what. And I think that's another reason why you are in the space that you're in today, because you've had to experience it firsthand to also recognize it in other people. I've watched you walk around this community and really just clock people's tea before they even had to say it. And I think because you are such a safe space, that allows people to want to not only come out and like be supportive of you, but also celebrate themselves in that light. Do you feel like that's pretty accurate?
I think, yes, it is. I think that, you know, thinking about my leadership abilities and how it was shaped to be able to do the work that I do today really played a huge role. Like I talked about earlier, like the peer leadership program that I was a part of called Youth Police and Partnership, YPP. I worked developing programs for the city that folks today would not even talk about, right? But they're still existing today. So when we think about like legacy, I think about the things that I have done in my community, not just JP, but community overall in the city of Boston that has impacted the city today. And one of those things being the City Heroes program, where young people get the opportunity to explore city official agencies such as BPD, the fire department, the state trooper, barricades, like they get to experience that throughout the summer. You know, I even started a teen police academy, you know, and from that, now they have a firefighters teen academy. So there's a lot of things that I've really invested myself in at an early age that is actually still currently taking place. I even, you know, looked at disparities within the Warren Gardens community, which now my family resides in, and really looking at the deficits of playgrounds for young people, and really went in there, looked at the playground, got folks on board such as Kaboom, shout out to Kaboom, shout out to Youth Build Boston, Ken Myers at the time, where I said to Ken Myers, I said, listen, my community needs a new playground. And he's like, what you want to do? I said, I want to get the playground going. He said, all right, we'll make it happen, write me a proposal. And I wrote the proposal, and now we have a whole brand new playground that's state of the art in Warren Gardens, and these young people can actually play safely. You know, so my leadership skills have really developed over time and really shaping my existence today as an executive director. And one thing I always said to myself was, you know, if I could do it for other agencies, why can't I do it for myself, right? And I think that us as Black and brown individuals feel like we have to work for the other people, right? But then when we work for other people, we're actually giving our skill set, but also opening other doors for their agency to grow. And I think about that too on a scale of working in violence intervention, you know? I worked at BMC for 7 years, and working at BMC doing violence intervention, I curated a lot of programs at BMC, right? I was one of the people who actually said to my boss, I said, listen, these kids are getting hurt. These kids are getting shot. these kids are getting stabbed and they don't even know how to do first aid onto each other, right? And so we did something called Stop the Bleed. I brought Stop the Bleed program into I don't know if it's still called the Barron Center, but back in the day it was called the Barron Center, for the city of Boston youth who are pretty, who are tough, rough around the edges. And I brought those type of programs there to them to say, hey, let's show these kids what does it take to do if if their friends get hurt on the streets. They're the first responders. Our first responders are not the first responders.
That's very true.
And so I started creating those type of programs, and I began to start thinking like, damn, if I could do it for other people, why can't I do it for myself? Why can I not invest in myself like I'm investing in their agency? So yeah.
I love that you brought that up because it is so true. I think parts of the reasons why, Black folks don't see themselves in those types of situations or even think, how can I invest? Because we need somebody to also invest in us, right? And I think sometimes we also are scared that we may create something that might not get the support. BMC is a really tough place to work in.
Yes.
You see all different types of walks of life.
Absolutely.
As well as socioeconomic levels in the city, right? So like BMC, love it down, but it is rough.
It is.
And for you to even be there for 7 years, I can only imagine like that's another reason why it inspired you to kind of do the work that you're doing as well.
Well, I've seen a lot of transgender individuals come into BMC that were being stabbed or that was being shot by their partners. And I felt like there was no ecosystem to support those folks who identified as LGBTQIA+, right? And when, as a case manager, I was seeking that support, it was not visible. It was not readily accessible. And so for me, as being a queer Black man, I had to take a look at myself and say, hold up. Like, where is the Black queer service providers at? And why are they not servicing our people the right way? We heard of other programs that services queer minorities, but it was like, no, they're not doing it right. Something's missing. We're missing a beat. And so that really took me to say to Keisha, our deputy director of Blue Foundation, I said, yo, let's sit down, let's curate something. And our focus was curating Boston Black Pride, hands down. But then we had these conversations and convenings with community, and community's like, I need jobs, I need food, I need childcare. I need housing.
Yeah.
I need, right? And so I just said to Keisha, I said, we can't do Boston Black Pride without providing a holistic approach of services to our people. And so that's how we got to the foundation.
I love that you named that too, because I think even earlier when I first met you, you were like, yeah, we can't just be out here partying, child. We have to take care of our mental health too. And I'll never forget when you said that, because I was like, that is so true. It's like, if I'm showing up to party, that's part of it, right? To have a safe space for us to celebrate each other. However, when we go back home and we're in broken homes, or we're in abusive homes, or we need, certain medications, where's the advocacy? Where's the support for that? So I've watched Blue not only span from like the celebrations, but also from into the medical field.
Yes.
You all even work with organizations such as like MAC, which is in Fenway Health, making sure that people like us are serviced in those ways, because where else are they gonna go?
Right.
There is a difference, and I love that we're having this conversation, because I really want your thoughts on, is there still a deficit and a division between the Black community and then the Black LGBTQIA community?
There is. There is a deficit, because I think that language is not being shifted to our Black cisgender heterosexuals, right? And I think that, when we think of Black queer identities, the first thing, like I said to you earlier, the first thing folks see when I walk into a room is a Black male, right? But they don't see my queerness. They only see my queerness when I speak about my advocacy movements and what I stand for, my values, my priorities. And so I think that for me, we have, at the foundation level, right? But at the Blue Foundation level, we're really trying to figure out how to bridge that gap between knowledge sharing, right? Because it's not just Black cis heterosexuals that are missing the language. It's even our ancestors, right? Our queer LGBTQ legends who are just like, this shit, excuse my language, is moving too fast for us, you know? And I'm like, well, we have to be able to say, let's gatekeep them. Let's let them know, hey, here go the language. Here how things are shifting today. But I think that we have to be more intentional about bringing our cis heterosexual family members into conversations around what Black queerness looks like, how we are fighting the same fight they're fighting,
Absolutely.
and that, you know, when it's time to go to war, we're going to war, right?
Absolutely.
And some of our cis heterosexuals are not, Black individuals are not, right? And so letting them know, like, what does our history look like, and sharing that history. And that's why I enjoy being a curator, right? A storyteller, because I'm able to tell people stories beyond just doing the work. No, you need to hear the story so you can know what impact you can make.
It's funny that you say that because there's two things that hit when you say that. One, if we know our history, we know where we've come from, but we also know that it was LGBTQIA people of color that were at the forefront of all of the things
Black
that we have
Lives Matter.
fought. Absolutely. So politically and socially, we have been conditioned to stay segregated even though we have been fighting the same fight this entire time. So it brings me back to those two things of us being the leaders of said movements and those fights. But it also makes me think about, is that why you even came up with the documentary, Narratives in Black? Like, was the lens of people don't know their history, so let's document that history?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, we are in trying times. We are in trying times. And when we first started in 2019, 2020, we was asking folks, like, where does these things live? Like, we keep on hearing about Elites, which was the first gay club that was really in Nubian Square. And I'm like, where's the archivals at? Like,
Which was named Dudley before Nubian.
Yeah, that part.
Which we had to fight for that.
Yeah, that part, you know what I mean? And that's another fight, right? And so I think for us, it was just like, our legends won't be here for long. And if we let their stories go untold, we don't have the truth, right? And I think that I'm always willing to hear the truth and not listen to what other folks have to say about the stories that need to be told. And so when I think of Danny, when I think of Paul Glass, when I think of Shirley Rooster, when I think of even Gary Daffin, you know, at the MAC, they have history. They have stories that have not been told. And when you think of the Black documentary, you would hear those stories so fluidly and understanding, like, wow, these folks are really out here making things pop, you know?
Yeah.
And we need to go back to that. But also, our young people who comes behind us need to know, hey, let's listen to these stories, because they started the movement. We're just continuing the movement.
Absolutely. I think that first and foremost, if it wasn't for you doing that documentary and having this idea of, like, we need to tell this story, there was so many things that I learned personally just by being involved in that project. In addition, producing that documentary was the first time I've ever produced film.
Dope.
So, like, when I say, like, your legacy travels, like, for me, from an educational standpoint and living in Boston, because I'm not from here, I'm probably the biggest non-Bostonian Boston person ever, because I carry it on my back. But, like, I didn't know that this history even existed. Like you said, Elites, ball.
The ballroom
I didn't
culture.
even know ball was brought to Boston that long ago. And even just, like, some of the stories from folks that I absolutely love, like Tisha Boo, and her story about even just getting surgery and medical procedures to
Hood procedures.
hood procedures. Yeah, because not call them that. Call them that, because this was in people's
underground.
basement.
It was underground.
For
you know?
sure.
It was underground.
Even that story, it like sends chills down my spine every time I go back to it, where she's speaking about riding in the back of a U-Haul. First of all, going from Boston to New York is a long trip.
About
But to
4
be
hours.
in the back of a U-Haul, laying on your back in pitch black darkness is just, it's almost like unbelievable, if you will. But that is the
That's the
lengths
story.
of what folks were going through because they wanted how they felt on the inside to match their outside.
But also we think about healthcare disparities in that, right? Because like if we had access to those things now, or then back then Tisha Boo and whoever else would not have had to go through those processes. Those wouldn't have to go through that situation the way they did go through it, right? And so we talk about affirming care, and I think that that's something we need to keep on pushing at when it comes to policy, affirming care, because folks like Tisha Boo is the storyteller behind that, right? I didn't have access to this certain type of care, so I had to go get it, you know.
Right.
And when we think about our one thing I love about our Black queer community is that we are go getters.
We're gonna find a way.
We're gonna find a way.
We're gonna find a
you
way. I think
know?
that's Black people
Period.
in general.
Yeah.
In general, but I feel like even with the LGBTQIA, it's even more so because there's this like stigma around just being ourselves. So therefore, we have to kind of go through the back door to try to figure out options that will work for us because we don't know where to seek those. I love the fact that your advocacy has turned into not just affirming care, but also advocacy for HIV and AIDS, for PrEP, for all types of different things. I remember working with Codman Square, Fenway Health, all of these other, I think you worked with the one over here on Blue Hill too. What's that called? Academy?
Are you talking about
What's that health center over there? You know what I'm talking about.
Demic?
Yeah, Dimick, and then
Dimick.
there's another one. What's the one on Blue Hill?
Mattapan Health, not Mattapan Health Center.
Not Mattapan.
Harvard.
Harvard.
Harvard Health.
We had to get help. We had to get help. And it's Black narratives and Boston's queer and trans history.
Yeah.
That is the documentary. I mean, I know I'm jumping around right now, but what is the plan for that? Because I feel like there are so many more people that need to see it. You went on a tour for that documentary. You've won awards at Roxbury Film Festival. Clock that T. Shout out to Lisa and their
Yes,
team
shout out
over
to Lisa,
there.
yes.
Like, what does that feel like to be able to do the work and then see it on screen?
You know, I'm gonna keep it real. I don't process things. I'm gonna keep it real. I don't process things. And like, I'm just like that person, all right, we did it, let's go. You know? And I don't sit down and like soak it all up because I feel like my mission's not accomplished, right? Because I feel like I'm getting emotional again. I feel like I have more to offer, right? But I do know that we have something that's very powerful, packaged very powerful. And it's all about how are we looking to move that story forward, right? And I have folks inboxing me today like, yo, what's up? Can we do the film? I want to do the film somewhere, like in the ballroom community, like, yo, we want to do the film somewhere. And so literally, shout out to Jaleel.
Yes, hey,
because Jaleel actually reached out to me like, we need to push this forward in my house. How can we get this film to be in the house? And so folks want to see it. But once again, we have so much moving pieces. I don't even sit in there and be like, okay, what's next with it, right? And my mind is like, advocacy. What else is out there that we need to be pushing forward? But I would say this. We have a lot in store for 2026 for the film. And hopefully that we can start moving it into different cities, but cities can start absorbing the information. I've been in conversations with AARP and trying to get AARP to sponsor that film, to be actually somewhere, we could do a viewing somewhere with them.
Beautiful.
Because like I said to them, our elders are in that film talking about the HIV and AIDS epidemic and how they navigated in uncertain times. And I always think about, if they navigated in those times, like in the 50s, 60s, honey, we can navigate now. There's hope. There's hope.
Yeah.
There's hope.
There is.
You know, there's very much so hope. And so that story alone in the Black documentary, she has shed light on so many things.
I'm getting emotional just listening to you speak about it because you're right. I think first and foremost, the first thing you said was, where do we have all this information? You know, as somebody who lives in Boston, you would never think to go to the JFK library to get to look through some of these archives that they have. You would never think about going to the LGBTQ history project.
Right. Shout out to Joanne and them.
Yes, because like they
helped us out very much
so immensely.
Yeah.
Joan too. Shout out to Joan as well.
Yes.
Like without their assistance, I don't think we would have gotten the product that we got because of we touched on so many different areas.
Errors.
You know, there was the HIV epidemic and AIDS epidemic. I think one of my other favorite parts of that was hearing Letta Neely speak about how people couldn't even attend funerals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They
yeah,
weren't even invited.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Imagine somebody you love passes away from something that there wasn't at the time
There was no cure.
a cure for it, and you can't even go and pay your respects because that's part of our ritual, that's part of our ceremony in our community.
Well, also, I think, when we think about Letta Neely's story in the Black documentary, she also spoke to the fact that people couldn't pay their respects because they were LGBTQIA, right?
That part.
They're not
And scared.
and they were scared,
Because
right?
at the time, HIV was so taboo that people thought even just you being in the room with somebody, you could contract it. And how misinformed we were as a people
We
back
still are
then.
misinformed. I think that I'm still educating my family about HIV and AIDS and how folks can just get it, So I think Black folks are still misinformed about the HIV and AIDS epidemic or the diaspora of HIV and AIDS, right? And so I think that education still needs to go, right? Where I don't know if I'm talking too much, but like recently I was dating someone in the past that contracted it, and they were out here bringing false allegations around me and saying, well, Curtis gave it to me. Curtis gave it to me. And I was okay with that. Today I was okay with it because I'm educated enough to understand it, right? But so when they started saying these things, my family started bringing it to me. I said to my family, I said, and what if I was? What would be so different? They was like, well, we don't know. We're just concerned. Don't be concerned. There's a lot of medicine out here that can protect us if we were diagnosed with HIV or AIDS, And so I think that misconception and misinformation is important that we share within the Black community specifically because white folks are getting this information. White folks are eating it up, right? It's just our Black communities who are not being informed about our current situation, our current, our current climate, I would say.
Especially young folks. I mean, if you look at the statistics now,
Getting younger.
It is younger. It is 18 through 25 that are contracting it at a very
high rate.
So I think you're right as far as, and there's so many different reasons for that. I mean, a lot of these parents are out here working. So some of your children are out here being unsuper.
Absolutely. I agree.
They are getting it in.
I agree.
Clearly.
I agree.
But they are walking around here unsupervised and uneducated.
Right.
You know what I mean? And also some of them are facing abandonment issues, Sometimes we're not under the roofs of our parents, or we may be in foster homes, or we may have been adopted. And sometimes, let's be clear, sex isn't always just about the feeling, it's also about the need, right? And fulfilling something inside of you that you feel like you don't have. So when you're looking for love, sometimes you find that in the intimacy of somebody's sheets.
But also I think too, being young and queer, sometimes you're trying to find your identity. And so sometimes you are out there basically doing
experimenting.
I would say high risk behaviors, right?
Yeah, that too.
Experimenting high risk behaviors. And so I think that that's also a mechanism that we have to hone in on. Like, how are we making our young people feel safe? How are we making our young people feel like they're included? And I think of like households, right? You just talked about that. Our mentorship program, we service 14 to 24-year-olds in our mentorship program. We don't see low levels 14 to 18, right? We don't see those numbers because, oh, I gotta go get it signed from my mom. My mom's not gonna sign it because that's some gay shit. Like, what I mean? And I'm just like,
that's
okay,
real.
this is a barrier that we have to figure out how to address it. But beyond that, we're seeing 20 to 24-year-olds eating this mentorship program up. And it's like, yeah, they need to eat it up, but they're going through some things internally in their households that are not really affirming their beliefs, right? And so I think we have to think beyond that. Like, these households are eating our young people up, like literally eating them up.
No, you're absolutely right. And then like also what I love about the mentorship program at Blue is the fact that you have a space that is dedicated for LGBTQIA youth. We have a plethora of youth organizations here in Boston, and they're great.
Right.
I even work at one. They're amazing. But I do find that sometimes that intersectionality of identity can be misconstrued in the youth organizations, because sometimes children like us who identify as queer don't feel necessarily like they can be themselves and safe in these programs because they feel like it's predominantly cis hetero. Just like you said, there's always been a thing about just being made fun of, and this like being an 80s baby, you recall it like it happened yesterday, between the AIDS epidemic, between being gay. At one point, the HIV and AIDS was blamed on gay people. So to kind of like, we're basically trying to
Erase
erase,
what was already stigmatized in the community.
which is difficult, right? And challenging. But you all found a way, and I see that. And I love the fact that the program is from 14
To
to
24.
24, because I feel like it could even be even younger than that, because let's be clear, when did you know you were gay?
Well, I actually knew I was gay at the age 14, 15, but then I came out at 18, 19.
I think I've known since I was like 9,
Yeah.
10 years old. Like, I just knew. Child, Janet Jackson, pleasure,
You know, I probably knew younger too. I used to wear my mom's heels and stuff in the house, playing teacher.
You know, we be...
Playing teacher, you know, with my mom's heels.
We be knowing.
Learning how to kiss with the teddy bear.
You know? My Barbies were doing some unimaginable
Y'all making me hot.
things.
Y'all making me hot. Y'all making me hot. Oh my, no, but that's really truth though. Like, I think that, you know, shout out to my sister, because if it wasn't for her coming out at a younger age than I was, I don't think that it would have been so easy for me to pursue, or well, it was easy for me to feel safe in coming out of my family.
How old was she?
My sister came out like at 12, like 10 to 12. But she didn't come out so drastically. You know, she had her little girlfriend. Oh, my sister, could my friend spend the night? You know, one of those type of situations. But it made it easier. But there was a lot of backlash too, which made me afraid to come out and say I am gay too. You know, I heard a lot of family talking trash. You know, how'd I go? You know, oh, that gay ass, da 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 da. You know what I mean? And so all these negative notions were being tossed at her. Not that she heard it, you know, but I heard it in the background because I'm the nosy nephew.
Inquisitive nephew. Inquisitive. We gotta move away from nosy.
And so hearing those things really basically froze my thought of even coming out and saying, hey, I am too. You know, I'm like, well, damn, if they can do that about her, they're gonna eat me up, you know? And I was always connected with all my family. And so I was really afraid, like, oh, maybe they'll disown me, or maybe like something, you know, something might erupt from me coming out. But shout out to my sister.
Did you ever see yourself as a leader? Like,
I always did.
Yeah?
That's crazy.
So
but
you knew?
At a young age, I did. I remember working, when I was saying this to my partner the other day, I was like, he's like, where was your first job? I was like, at the barbershop, Lawson's Barbershop, sweeping up hair every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They had me sweeping up hair. But then I had an opportunity to work for a summer job program. Shout out to Phil at Curtis Hall. I don't even know where he's at now.
ironic that it's your name.
Yeah. And so I used to work at Curtis Hall, and that's in JP. And I was 14 years old, working at Curtis Hall underneath Phil Davies. A great person. And I remember after that summer job, next year I came back, he was like, you're the boss. I was like, huh? He's like, you're the boss. I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, you're the boss, so anybody who comes into the summer program had to go through you, and you got to get them signed up and stuff for this year.
Wow.
And so that was already showing me I had some type of leadership capabilities. But then working at YPP, I told you about earlier, I got interviewed. I became a core peer leader. Ooh, you're a core peer leader, right? And core peer leaders basically meant that you had to train all the districts to learn the curriculum of the program. And that already was a leadership position. And throughout that, I also was hiring young people in to work for the program. And so that showed different leadership skills and capabilities, but I always felt like I possessed and inherited some type of leadership skill or quality.